Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a new episode of Chatting with Lady C. Hello, Mum, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, honey. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Oh, good.
It's been a great week, good weekend as well. Fun weekend.
Great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Glad you enjoyed it,
Thank
honey.
you. I hope you had a good weekend as well with all your friends.
I did. I had a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much, honey. It was really marvelous.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, very interesting conversations, etc., etc.
I bet.
So, now, what do we have in store? Do tell.
So today, we just want to thank everybody for all the comments and everybody supporting and looking at the videos. And we're just going to continue on Mum reviewing the book of Meghan and Harry. So we're just fulfilling the demands of so many people that have asked Mum just to continue on her reviews and what she thinks about the book. So we're going to be listening to what Mum has to say.
And also, of course, it's really rather funny, isn't it? Because people have said, can I please, since I've gone through the odium of reading the book that they don't want to read, but they want to know the contents of it. Which is really rather sweet. So,
Yes.
Okay, so I suppose, thank you very much for all your questions and your comments. And yes, I have waded through the sea of manure overlain with treacle, and I am delighted actually to continue reviewing it. And as many of you have said, can I please pick up some of the disparities and, you know, the patent falsehoods and the glaring, I suppose, rather naughty things that have gone on. So we'll plunge right in with Before the Wedding, when, by which time Harry was completely smitten and besotted by, amid scabies and cowering Durand's own account. And there, in my book, I recount how when Harry was in Canada, visiting Meghan, that somehow a dissatisfied servant, in quotes, managed to leak the story of their romance. Now that I heard from Adam Helliker, and it's not in Funding Freedom and Finding Freebies. In Funding Freedom and Finding Freebies, it magically and conveniently happens at a time that everything seems to have been set up in place for the story to be revealed and for Meghan to be shown in the most glowing light, all of which took place in a period of less than 24 hours. And however, what is in their book is how after this happened, when the Sun made the point that Meghan was on Pornhub, that Meghan and Harry absolutely freaked, and they realized that, this is really going to be a very rough ride. And so one thing led to another, and Meghan, they don't say in the book that it's Meghan, but I'm telling everybody it's Meghan who wrote pretty much the statement that Harry then issued through his office. And it says, now the Prince of Wales at the time was on an official visit in the Middle East with the Duchess of Cornwall, and it was a very important official visit. And the protocol is that when a royal is on an official visit, all attention is focused on them, and no attention is snatched from them under any circumstances whatsoever. Well, Harry and Meghan in the very first of the many attempts, snatched the attention, because Harry, it recounts, the palace decided to go ahead with the statement nonetheless, much of which was drafted by Harry himself. Charles learned of the statement just 20 minutes before it went out. Sure enough, as soon as Harry put out his declaration, the statement dominated the news cycle. The team at Clarence House, which had spent months putting together Prince Charles's tour in the hopes that it would be covered significantly, was crushed. While disappointed that his son didn't wait for him to come back, Charles also understood intimately that the situation with Meghan had reached a tipping point. The fact of the matter is that everybody at the palace was absolutely spitting bricks that the statement went out, and it was seen as Harry being his over-emotional, hysterical, attention-seeking, attention-grabbing, normal self. And it is not true that Harry wrote that statement pretty much himself, unless Harry has now become Meghan. It also says that Charles recognized that Harry wanted to protect the loved ones in his life. Let's take out the violence and oh! His son had already lost the person he had once loved the most, his mother. And what the hell does his mother's death have to do with any of this? But you see the emotional manipulation at play here, that no matter what, poor Diana's corpse and carcass are both dragged back in at every instance that it plays well for Harry and Meghan to somehow enhance their objectives using Diana's death. I'm sorry, I think it's just so distasteful. Anyway, that's the first one. On page 102, the next farcicality is Meghan bemoaning to a friend, and of course bemoaning to Amit Scabies as well, how hard done by she is. I mean, this is a woman who has spent her whole life hustling her way up by practically every means that she had at her disposal to grab attention, and is still doing it. But she has the temerity to be moaning to a friend about the fact that the palace told her, and she had been given a necklace. And again, this book is full of all sorts of promotions for all of the people that Meghan is in bed with commercially, and promoting everybody. It's not one occasion is missed by these authors to product place. So we have, while running errands around town on December the 3rd, she wore her newly purchased $300 Maya Brennan necklace, a delicate 14-karat gold chain bearing the initials M and H. That same day, she also dressed her beagle Guy in a Union Jack sweater, posting the snap to Instagram. The message was received by Harry, who turned up outside her door not 24 hours later. Then it continues that an aide from Buckingham Palace at the press office, phones her up and effectively says to her, "You know, my dear, if you are really sincere," and now this is my interpretation of what happened as opposed to theirs, but you can depend on it, this is what really happened, not their candy-coated floss. "Oh, you know, my dear, if you really don't want any publicity, I would recommend that you do not go around town dressing your dog in a Union Jack and wearing a necklace with your initials and Prince Harry's. So Meghan, of course, she said little during the call because she's always so sweet and so very demure, and when people are victimizing her, she never knows what to say, choosing instead to simply listen to the counsel. But after hanging up, she felt frustrated and emotional. Well, how does he know that if she didn't tell him? While she knew the aide had good intentions, the surreal experience of having someone from her boyfriend's office tell her what kind of jewelry to wear or not to smile at a photographer was too much. So now we have... I mean,
ridiculous.
Don't you think it is? It is ridiculous, isn't it? So there we have poor Meghan. And I mean, they lay the ground at every single turn for Meghan being a victim on the scale of, some massive martyr, like maybe Saint Stephen, or maybe they're even working up to somebody really special, like somebody whose name I will not mention because it would be blasphemous, but it's just distasteful, but it also is nonsensical, because if Meghan is going out with a prince, she's not, and she doesn't want publicity, and they're telling her how to avoid publicity. Why is she emotional?
There's nothing to be emotional about.
Exactly. Why is she frustrated? Why is she upset that he has interfered with her? Because it's her boyfriend? It's not because it's her boyfriend. I mean, her boyfriend has nothing to do with it. It's because he's Prince Henry of Wales. That's what it's all about. Her ego is so monumental, and they don't realize that at every turn they reveal how monumental her ego is. Her boyfriend. It's nothing to do with her boyfriend. It's that he was a Prince of Wales, and they were trying to manage the situation. Also, what Scabies doesn't say, and what I am confident the aide did not say, but I'm going to tell everybody, is that the aide would also have known it's common and vulgar and crass and crude for any royal girlfriend to brand herself like a heifer wearing an initialed chain around her neck with her initials and his. It is the height of vulgarity. It shows how completely tasteless and self-promoting and vulgar she really is. And they would not have said that to her, but they should have said that to her. So that's the next thing. They are again talking about publicity because, remember, this is the very early days of Meghan and Harry's relationship. They've only been together for 3 months when this news is made public about their relationship. So it's a very new relationship. But of course, by making it public and by Meghan being under attack, she is roping in Harry because she is bringing out Harry's protective instincts. So Harry's going to protect her. She knows Harry has a thing where the press is concerned. Remember, this is a girl who, by the admission of people who were close to her all her life, had made a study of Diana's life and had read practically every book that had ever been written about Diana, including my 2 books, had studied the subject, used Diana as a role model, now finds herself involved with Diana's son and is turning herself into Diana Mac too. So it's a tremendous psychological ploy as well as a great game move. You know, it's a fabulous thing for a chess player to do, to become the lost mother. And becoming the lost mother in adulthood is just the most tremendous mind occupation, let's put it that way, that you could actually ever come up with. And they are speaking to Sophie Trudeau, who offered Meghan advice, and basically Sophie would have made it clear that every single aspect of Meghan's past would be dug up. So the important thing was to be honest with Harry, tell him everything. Well, she certainly gave him a version of her story, and having given him the version of the story, he has swallowed it hook, line and sinker, which of course is one of the reasons why it was imperative that Meghan cut herself off from everybody in her past, including her father, who would actually spill the beans. Because Meghan's version of the story is very self-serving. On that we can depend. However, they were, and in the book they quote, both of us were totally surprised by the reaction after the first 5 or 6 months of when we had it to ourselves, of what actually happened from then. You can have as many conversations as you want and try and prepare as much as possible, but we were totally unprepared for what happened after that. Then, and Meghan says, we were just hit so hard at the beginning with a lot of mistruths that I made the choice to not read anything, positive or negative, according to Meghan. Well, this is a woman who says she doesn't read anything, but is able to quote back everything that everybody has ever written about her. I mean, it's a wonderful picture that they're painting, you know, but does it ring true to you?
No, not at all. Because even if you don't read your comments, and some people don't, you would have had read one or two. You would have had a sneaky look, like just one or two. I've said, okay, and then moved on.
Well, of course, as you know, I never used to read anything about comments about me, ever. But it doesn't alter the fact that I basically knew what was going on, at least to the extent that, you know, people would tell me things. But she knows everything that's going on, as does he anyway. We now have them being complete victims. Still, after fighting back, the couple was exhausted. This is written now, this bit is written by Colin Durand. And how I know it is, she says the couple was exhausted. Amit Scabies would have said, were exhausted. They had been together publicly only just over a week, but it felt more like a lifetime. The adversity only made their love for each other stronger, and a family friend said that it strengthened Harry's mission to protect Meghan. And there we have the whole thing laid bare. Meghan's ploy to make sure that Harry's protective instincts were brought to the fore. You see how she plays him like a violin. And in the book, I don't think the authors realize the full extent of what they're giving away to people who have any perception. You know, it's a really interesting phenomenon to see how the truth can hang people. So anyway, next one. Meghan had a good idea about how the pap game worked, but now she was in Harry's overwhelming and confusing world and so deferred to him and his staff. There was an element of, I'm just going to be quiet and see what everyone else thinks, a friend said of Meghan's attitude. Well, in fact, it's actually true. This is true. And this again gives away the game that Meghan was playing, because Meghan allowed everybody at the palace to believe that she was deferring to their superior knowledge on the subject of press attention and how royalty is supposed to conduct itself in the presence of the press. While in fact, of course, she had no intention of playing that game once the wedding ring was on her finger. But she did what Diana did with Charles, because Diana yesed Charles and everybody in the royal family, in the royal circle, to death until the wedding ring was on her finger, at which point she decided, I'm not going to do this anymore. You will remember, if you cast your mind back to conversations I had with certain people at Bourne Street who were trying to hook a lord, I used to say things like, oh my dear, what you're trying to do is the Diana Spencer Wales version of hooking a man. Yes, 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 darling. Oh, I love Balmoral. I love everything. I love everything you do. And as soon as the wedding ring is on the finger, I hate Balmoral and you're going to do what I want.
No, I can't remember that.
Harlot.
Maybe, but I can't remember.
Okay,
you
you don't. Too far back. Well.
Too far back.
Okay, so anyway, next one. Here we now have an admission that Meghan was fully aware of her responsibilities from the word go in terms of her duty to be apolitical. If she wanted to fully enter the royal sphere, she had to remain apolitical, which made her previous level of activism impossible. She had previously spoken out against Brexit and called Donald Trump misogynistic and divisive. Silencing herself was no small sacrifice. Well, since these are Meghan's feelings, and of course history has shown that in fact she only silenced herself as long as it suited her to do so. And as soon as she got pregnant, she immediately flew to California and was busy setting up financial deals and engaging with her former advisors so that she would be engaged in terms of not only commerce but politics, and that in fact she understood very clearly from before what was called for, and she only went along with it until she had the insurance of a baby.
Okay.
And to return to the bit about the pap game and Meghan knowing how it worked, because of course she certainly knew how it worked, because she was always tipping off the paps to get publicity for herself when she was on Suits and trying to get herself a higher profile and make herself more famous. And there is no doubt that when she says, as she has subsequently said, that she had no idea about how the pap game worked, it's a lie. It's a lie. Because
everybody sort of knows how the pap game works. A little bit. Everybody's sort of like, it's like a TV show. Everybody knows how they do it. It's not off the camera into the book. We all know.
But what people do not know, unless they are famous, is it's very easy to thwart the paps. You've seen me do it repeatedly. And Audrey Hepburn once said how it should be done in my presence, and alluding to Elvis Presley, who she found it mystifying that Elvis Presley said he couldn't go out because people were always following him around. She said the first day you show up, everybody photographs you. The second day you show up more or less the same way, doing the same thing. Fewer photographers follow you. The third day you show up again, more or less the same thing.
And then they sort of stop.
By the fourth day, nobody's showing up.
There's only one still trying to get that sneaky picture.
Yeah. And while if you do what Meghan does, which is court publicity, and what Diana used to do, there is a way of doing it. You always provide them with a new angle, a new story, a new photograph. And what you also do is you do what both Meghan and Diana have adopted as a superb technique. You say, I don't want to be photographed, and then ring them up. You know, or Meghan doesn't need to ring them up, because what she does is she travels with her camera crew. She and Harry now travel with their camera crew.
Okay.
So they're papping themselves and then posting it, knowing that it will be picked up once they've posted it on the internet. So, of course, in Diana's day, there was no such thing as the internet. So
it was a bit harder.
So it was harder. But
nowadays you can just ask somebody, give him a little salary and say, follow me around and take every picture I want to. Especially with the money they've got, they could add anybody just following them around and taking pictures and posting them for them.
Well, or just getting a photographer and then doing it themselves, which is, I'm sure, what they do.
The photographer would do it for them, I bet.
On page 110, it's very interesting. You know, Harry and Meghan have made much of the fact that they can't go anywhere without being papped, and she's even said that they're too famous for Archie to go on play dates or go out. Of course, Prince George, Prince Louis and Princess Charlotte are not too famous to go out to the park and go to visit friends and go to school. They're not too famous because they're only the Cambridges. I mean, they're not as important and grand, and certainly not as in demand as Harry and Meghan and Archie. So, but again, it's the game of hide and seek. It's, you know, it's a way of keeping the press interest up, and it's denialism of the highest order. But there is an interesting account here that they had accepted last-minute tickets to see the curious incident of the dog in the night time. But having gotten a late start driving out of the palace, they were afraid the Piccadilly Circus traffic they were now stuck in would keep them from making the 7:30 p.m. curtain call. So they hopped out of the nondescript minivan they had taken to avoid drawing attention to themselves and started to walk briskly, heading down and holding hands towards the Gielgud Theatre. The West End was bustling, and the couple knew that if they moved quickly enough, they could get into the theatre without being spotted. Both were quite excited by the idea of running through the busiest streets of London, knowing full well that the entire world wanted to see them together. It was a brief moment of freedom they hadn't experienced in a while, even if it lasted for only 60 seconds at the most. For that small amount of time, they felt as if they were just another of the many couples powering down the sidewalk. Blah. It was exhilarating and fun. when they breezed through the door of the theatre like regular patrons. The usher waiting to take them to their VIP box seats was somewhat taken aback. Harry and Meghan exchanged a look that showed they couldn't believe it either. Well, I think anybody who suffers from constipation should read that passage, because it is an absolute emetic. I mean, I don't think more than that I need say, because really it is just ridiculous. I mean, but it shows that Harry and Meghan, as I have pointed out in my book time and again, when they talk, when they want to be private and when they don't want to be found out, like when they went from Canada to Palm Beach and then to Miami for Harry to give that speech to the bankers. They're perfectly able to function under the radar as and when it suits them. And as and when it doesn't suit them, they're busy saying, oh, we can never function below the radar. We are so got at by everybody. I mean, honestly, are people expected to believe all this rubbish? And you know, the tragedy is that there are hundreds of thousands of people out there,
especially around Piccadilly Circus, that would not even recognise them.
Or not care, or not even look.
Not look, because you've got so many people on those streets that you're not looking out for them too.
But even if they did recognise them, the fact of the matter is there are people all over the world who A, would see them, B, would pay no attention, you know, or just look at them because...
And be happy and say, they're there, and just move on, like, I'm lucky I got to see them in the streets and 1 out of a million.
Which, as you have seen countless times, has happened with me, with people in public. You know, they recognise me and there's a thing and you smile or you don't, or sometimes, and you know, you just move on. It's like,
and then there's that one-off that would come and ask for a picture, and you do the little picture.
But you know, they are just so full of it. They're just so full of it. And the writers of this book clearly don't understand what fame's all about. Well, of course they don't, because they've never been famous and they're just tagging along in the wake of famous people, and thrilled, as so many journalists of a certain ilk are, thrilled to be in the presence of royalty, or God, you know, like they're not human as well, and they're in a special category of person. But of course the reality is they're human beings just like anybody else. But anyway, next one. Interestingly enough, there was a photographer who had actually followed them from the palace and was photographing them.
Yes.
And wait for it. Meghan's comment when it was published the following day was, and this is amid scabies now, the couple were unbothered, not the couple was, knowing that such an article had been bound to happen eventually, although Meghan wasn't crazy about the fact that the two of them had been followed without their knowledge. That was creepy, she told a friend. Well, first of all, it's preposterous, you know, I mean,
yes.
Famous people get followed by photographers all the time. You know, it's like a no-brainer.
You don't even think about it after a while.
No.
You're just used to it. You're going to walk out a restaurant and get 50 flashes in your face. You're like, well, they're here.
How many times have I said to you children over the years, you know, when you're in public, make sure that you disport yourself in a correct manner, because you never know who's going to be taking a photograph of you, and therefore you need to conduct yourself in a correct manner. How many times
nowadays everybody just has a phone, so they can take a random person can just spot you, take a picture, and sell it off now.
That's right.
So you have to be careful.
That's right. You know, also of course, so this is her seeking sympathy. You know, she wants fame, and then you're to sympathize with her because she's got fame, and fame is burdensome. Well, fame can be burdensome, but it's not burdensome the way she's making out. And since I'm famous, and I've been famous a hell of a lot longer than she has been, even though she's now far more famous than I am, and hopefully will ever be, the fact of the matter is, what she's just chatting rubbish, And Harry also, the thing about fame, as you will know, because you've been around famous people all your life, is that fame is a coat that many people wear lightly.
Yes.
But some people just hug it to them to make themselves feel important and let everybody else know how important they are. And since they can't say, oh, I'm so important because I'm famous, they do the opposite. They flip it on its head and say, oh, I'm so important because fame is... No, they flip it and say, oh, fame is so burdensome.
Yes.
You have no idea the weight of fame and how it absolutely breaks my back.
It's true. Some
It's
people
true,
are
isn't
that,
it?
yes,
I mean, you talk about... I mean, it's
so hard having a fan, isn't it?
Oh,
It's basically
yes.
that.
Oh, life's so
Making
tough,
them feel happy about what you do. It's hard to keep them happy. It's so hard.
And the joke is that these are the very people who 9 times out of 10 are the ones who want to be more and more famous. Because people who are genuinely famous, and now I'm speaking about, say, people like the Queen and Prince Philip or Prince William and Catherine and, people who are genuine, and Harry as he used to be, people who are genuinely famous, or the Pope,
yes.
when something valid happens, they're in the newspapers or nowadays on television or in the media or whatever it is, on the internet, whatever. But much of their life is conducted outside of the public arena, and nobody ever knows what's going on. You can guarantee that anybody who crops up with the regularity that Meghan and Harry do, because they bombard the public, they are bombarding the internet with news of themselves on a daily basis. One day it's the fact that it's one thing after the other. Let's just not even bother to particularize, because everybody knows every day. I mean, it's reached the stage where there's almost a level of ravishment about it, that people complain about the fact that they are bombarded with all of this stuff from Harry and Meghan that they really don't want to be a part of. But because it's valid news and it's a news story that is evolving, it's like a car crash happening, and they feel compelled or induced to have their attention grabbed yet again, but they're unwilling to have their attention grabbed to the extent. I feel like that. I mean, practically every day when I go on to the computer or into the newspapers or turn on the television or somebody phones me up, I think, oh God, no, not again, not again.
Me too. People talk to me about it now, and it's just like, since I've been doing the videos with you, I'm like, I don't want to say.
Yeah.
It's all every day you hear somebody asking me a question about them, and
it's a form of ravishment, it's a form of violating everybody's space. It also, Diana used to do the same thing. It's also the way to keep yourself in the forefront.
True.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's called trending.
Is that, yeah.
Well, that's
yeah.
what
Yes.
Dima would have said, no?
Yes, well, that's what he said when I came out of the jungle. Do
Exactly,
you
so
remember?
it's trending.
He said, "Oh, Mum."
You're trending.
I said, "Hi, honey, how are you?" And he said, "Oh, fine." He said, "Do you know you've been trending?"
I didn't even know what that was.
And I said, "What's trending?"
Yes.
Oh, God.
Always first on top of the news.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? I'm deviating from the subject now, but I just couldn't believe it, you know. And to discover that I had been the most Googled living individual of 2015, I thought, God, that's unbelievable. You know, I mean, it took me a while to actually think, wow, this is unbelievable. Fortunately, it's moved on from that. So now, next one. And we're going to end on this one.
Yes.
It's a grammatical error. I can't resist it. I can't resist it. You know, I can't resist it. To lift her spirits, Harry planned a New Year's trip where they could rarely get away from it all. He rung up his pal, Inge Solheim, a Norwegian adventure guide Harry had befriended during a Walking with the Wounded charity trek back in 2011. Blah, blah, blah. He rung his pal. Well, when I went to school, it was ring, rang, rung. I ring you. I rang you. I have rung you. It's not I rung you.
Still is the same.
I think we can end on that note, safe in the knowledge that racially motivated racist aide who pointed out to Amit scabies that he didn't sound the way the average royal correspondent sounded. Should have actually listened to the way he actually speaks instead of the accent with which he speaks, and certainly to the way he writes, because if he didn't get an effing grammar, he should have got one. And on that note, I end this video. Oh, sorry, I suppose I should say, if there is a whole load more that I can actually say, maybe next time being rather more cutting than I have been this time, about maybe some of the false claims, but we are only on 100 and something pages, and the book is 350. So if you want another video, and those of you who want to save your money, I'm not going to argue with you if you want to save your money. I've read it, and I'm perfectly happy to do a public service. So, thank you.
Well, thank you everyone. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit the like button and subscribe and share with your friends. Thank you and goodbye.